On a stage in front of an audience 10,000 strong, tied 2-2 with the best Protoss in the world, with $100,000 on the line, TY had to dig deep, searching for a way to ensure victory. What he found was 3 siege tanks, a Liberator, and a dozen Marines with combat shields. This build won 2 out of the 3 next games, and it got him a $100,000 check. Welcome to PiG Daily, guys. Today we're going to be looking at TY's $100,000 TvP 3-tank push. Filthy tank push. Not sure if you guys have been seeing this on ladder yet. We're going to be looking at it right now. So let's not dilly-dally. Let's dive straight into game, and let's start talking about it. So, as I said, it was tied 2-2, best of 7, IEM World Championship Grand Final, and TY starts to pull this out. Now, what's interesting is up to this point, TY in Game 1 of this series was edged out in Game 1 by Stats' Colossi play. Reasonably close game, but Stats' defense was just a bit too good. Got a bit ahead and managed to win that game. After that, though, Stats had basically just swapped into Phoenix Adept play. 3 games in a row. And the next 2 games, TY looked utterly impervious to it. Like, he just looked unstoppable. Like, there was no way this Stargate player was gonna do well versus him. Every other Terran in the tournament looked like they really struggled against it. But TY seemed to be the one who really just understood that it's a very aggressive mid-game composition. And if he just sat back and didn't give an opportunity for the Protoss to kill his army would keep getting better and better and eventually outshine the Protoss. He always seemed to find his aggressive moment. There were games where Stats did transition off the Phoenix Adept into Storm. TY would hit him just before Storm finished, and it would be a whole bunch of Adepts who've kind of lost their power in the late game, a bunch of High Templar who aren't useful yet, and a bunch of Archons who don't really do that much, and TY would just roll over the top of him. So here in game number 5, interestingly enough, is the first game where actually Stats swapped back into Colossi play. Oh, if you're wondering where the second win from Stats came from, by the way, that was Palladino Terminal, the the fastest rush distance in the pool. Stats went Proxy Stargate with a Pylon Rush. I did a daily on that, daily 121. And basically, TY just misjudged, probably hasn't practiced that map enough since it is a new one. And his bunker was 3 seconds late. And because of that, he took massive damage from the rush and then took follow-up damage from the Oracle, and everything got out of control. So in that one game, Stats was able to win with Phoenix Adept follow-up, but that was because he was so far ahead from the opening. So here, we're going to see Stats go back into that robotics play and try to play that Colossi play again. And I'm not sure if TY expected this at all. But what we do see from TY is he goes for a 2 Hellion opening, and the moment he verifies that that's what's happening, he commits to what's going on. So let's talk a little bit about the opening before I talk more about the different kind of reactions and actions and back and forth and all of that cool stuff. I'll 8 times speed it from the start, just so we can take a look at that. All right, so guys, it is your standard gas first into a barracks. So gas, barracks, command center. TY opting to do this with no scout. Very common amongst the high-level players. The Reaper will go for scout. There will be a factory down immediately on 20 supply and a reactor straight on after that barracks. The gas, even though he hasn't scouted with an SCV, TY is opting for the gas after the depot and the factory are down. So isn't rushing that second gas at all. His Reaper will come in, have a poke around, has to run away, and he's just going to swap the factory and the barracks and build 2 Hellions, as well as that starport immediately. He's going to build 1 Marine and then a tech lab out of this barracks. Oh, he actually cancels the Marine this game. Okay, sometimes he builds the tech lab, then a Marine. Sometimes he builds it the other way around. There we go. Yeah, so he's going to queue up the Marine anyway. Doesn't really matter exactly how you do that. So he's going to come in with these 2 Hellions and that Reaper. And the combination of these 2 is going to give him a full scout. He sees the Robo, sees the extra gateways, so he knows it's going to be the fast Colossi style. And he's also going to get 4 probe kills. And most importantly here, he keeps his Reaper alive, which is really nice. So behind this, you're going to swap the barracks and the factory around after those after 2 Widow Mines. So it's 2 Hellions and 2 Widow Mines off the factory, and then it swaps with that barracks. And the barracks just built a single Marine. You then build a siege tank, or 3 siege tanks, constant marine production. You build a medevac out of that starport, you load that up with the 2 mines, and you go across. So you've got 2 opportunities to do a little bit of pressure to your opponent with this build. It's the 2 Hellion run by, and then the 2 Widow Mine follow up. We'll take a look at this. Comes in, and what's so great about this, let's go back 10 seconds, is he purposefully distracts with the Reaper. You'll notice he comes in here, just trying to pull the eyes away from stats. And if you watch this from stats camera, you can kind of see the way he pulls stats camera around. So we're on stats vision right now. This is exactly what stats was looking at in the game. And he's like watching the Reaper, and then the Reaper curves back, and he pulls his attention away. For that crucial second, the Mothership Core pulled slightly far away, doesn't get the double overcharge off in time, and bam, 6 probes go down. You're not always going to find that damage, but it's really good of TY to look for that damage, you know, forces his opponent to be honest. And if you get 10 total probe kills in the early game like he has this game, it's almost impossible for Protoss to stop this opening. So let's go back and quickly run you guys through the rest of the build. Oh, for you guys in Twitch chat, by the way, I didn't link it. For you guys watching on YouTube, scroll down to the comments section. The spawning tool link is right there. I will just link the spawning tool for you guys right now, just so the people watching live can follow along with that. So even if you miss something in the video or the live run through, you've got a written out build order if you guys watch, as well as that. So there we go, just linked that for you guys. All right, cool. So you do build this medevac and you go across constant tank production, constant marine production. As soon as you got 300 minerals, should be right around the time that medevac pops at 44 supply. You're going to drop down 2 more barracks, and then you're going to drop down a 3rd gas just a few seconds later, about 46 supply. This game is actually going to drop it a little bit later. Oh, he actually does drop a later 3rd gas in this Reaper. Okay, cool. He does this 3 different games, so there are a few very slight variations. This is interesting, how long he's delaying the 3rd gas this game. So this game, he actually delayed the 3rd gas by a good like 35-40 seconds. And that is a little bit odd, because that does slow. Oh, it still times out okay. So even if you take that 3rd gas a little bit late, that's all right. That's interesting. So that's something I didn't realize, because he does this in 3 games in a row, and there's always very slight variations. We do see TY change things up ever so slightly here and there. Anyway, back to the point. You basically just build the tech lab on the starport after the medevac. You swap the starport down. You do not start a liberator straight away. So keep in mind, guys, important little bit of timing here. You've got to do things in order. So you swap it off, and then the starport sits idle for a little bit. You keep building siege tanks. He's a little bit slow on that here. And this barracks will swap on there and start combat shields immediately. Now notice he's started the liberator. That was a mistake. So he cancels it and says, wait, I need the gas for combat shields. That takes a lot longer to finish. And then once combat shields finishes, that's when he starts the liberator. This 3rd barracks, no add-on, just builds marines. You want to get about 2 or 3 marines out of this, ready for that push to move across the map, because it's very important you hit hard and fast. You'll notice there's no 3rd CC, no engineering bay. You don't have any sort of defense. This is a specific build you only want to be doing against these Robo or Robo Twilight openings, where your opponent can't really do anything like Oracles or DTs to you. Of course, Robo Twilight, yeah, if someone's going like a DT drop and you do this build, you could end up in a little bit of trouble. Luckily, that is kind of out of the meta. I actually haven't been DT dropped in months. And you will push across the map. You will have 13 Marines with combat shields, 3 siege tanks, a single SCV. If you're like me and you probably want to commit a little bit more to this push when you're first learning it, you want to bring 2 or 3 SCVs, and you have a single liberator, and you just start leapfrogging your way forward. Notice how TY scanned ahead as well. So if we watch on TY's camera, you can see he's kind of just doing his macro, and then he's going to go, ooh, okay, can I move in? He scans, he goes, yeah, it's just a Colossi and a few units. Okay, I can move up kind of close. And he starts sieging his tanks. Just leapfrogging forward. He's going to build a bunker. And you don't ever get over eager and just unsiege all your tanks and like move them up here. Your aim is just to set up just in range of the Nexus if possible. If you have to set up a little bit further back, that's fine. The whole idea is to set up an impenetrable position and say, hey, Protoss, if you want to engage into this, you're going to get destroyed. Tanks do so much damage to armored units now. They can snipe down Colossi and Stalkers really well. The Liberator still does a lot of damage, even though it's not as much, you know, as it used to be. It used to do like 85, now it does 75. It still absolutely destroys units, especially when it's got Marines and Tank Splash supporting it. And you see TY here, he's actually just going to win the game. Since he did that early probe damage, he's not only going to take a fantastic trade, but he's just building turrets, he's repairing. He's brought more units up now, takes out the third base, which isn't even really necessary. And Stats is going to go to break it. And it's going to look really pathetic. He manages to kill one missile turret. And I think that's all he killed. In that push, it was like almost nothing. It's really, really sad for Stats. But if you let the Terran get set up in this ideal position, you don't really have a lot of choices, right? Shit gets nasty really, really quickly. So let's quickly talk about the transition so you guys know that as well. Because this is not an all-in. It's bloody committed. You need to do a lot of damage. Hell, no add-on on the starport, no add-on on the barracks, no engineering bays. Yeah, okay, no fast third CC as well. Okay, this is pretty fucking committed, but it's okay. Like, you do actually have a transition. We're going to see in another replay how he actually manages to carry it out. So the transition, guys, is as you move out, the third barracks will build a tech lab. So this one builds a tech lab and starts stim. You'll build a third command center. You'll start either an engineering bay, or some games he starts a double engineering bay. You'll also add a fourth gas. And at 300 minerals, you'll add a fourth and fifth barracks. So we see he's got a bit of excess minerals now. He's just busy setting up his push. But the moment he gets a little bit of time, he's going to come back here and build a few more barracks. One can use the tech lab from this factory. Oh yeah, the factory swaps off and builds a reactor, by the way. Because you don't really want to keep building siege tanks. Obviously, you want Widow Mines for TvP. Those two barracks come down. It's by no means perfect macro from TY, because the most important thing is controlling his push correctly. But you'll see he still kind of comes back once in a while and goes, oh, got to add the upgrade. Oh, got to add some barracks. And gets the job done. No concussive shells with this push because you don't really use any marauders. He's only rallying those across a bit later on. And that is your build order. Sexy, sexy, sexy. Guys, please do think of any questions you have. Any queries like that, shout them out. I'm going to hop into the Honor Grounds replay to take a look at that. So, similar to this game, on Cactus Valley, we are going to see a slight variation of this, where instead of doing the Hellion attack, TY goes for a Raven very early. But that version we'll look at very quickly at the end. That version's really weird, because you can't get the guaranteed scout. If you're a Reaper that can't get in and spot the Robo, then you end up like you're going for this push, or and you've got no way to verify outside of scanning that they're going for Robo Twilight. So you very well could be going up against a Phoenix Adept push and end up in a really weird position. And that's why that actually gets very interesting as well, because in Game 7 of a finals, to go for this push without really being sure what your opponent's doing, I mean, I'm kind of confident that TY just knew Stats was going to be doing the same sort of play, but it's still very dicey. And I do feel like even though a Raven with auto turrets, it's good against Phoenix and Adepts, is it really that good that you're happy to do a 3-tank push with very limited anti-air and not really any ability to deal with like 12 Adepts shading on top of you when you're first trying to set up? I don't think so. I think you'd kind of have a really bad time. But anyway, so guys, we are going to be looking at another game. TY does the exact same build, except his third gas is on time this game. So, same build, Hellions, Barracks builds a tech lab, Starport builds a medevac, builds a marine, builds 2 Widow Mines. The Hellions ran in, along with the Reaper, so he gets that full scout. What's the full scout see? Oh, you've gone Robo 3 gate. Oh, okay, cool. I know what you're doing. Awesome, you're gonna go fast Colossus play. I want to go ahead and commit to my push. So this is game 6. Starts building tanks. The Widowmine drop moves out across the map. Very standard stuff. We will see that third gas go down. There we go. Yeah, it was down at about 25 seconds late the other game. He comes in. He sees... Holy shit, you are well prepared for this. You've got 2 Adepts and 2 Stalkers chilling. And he goes in and just turns around pretty much instantly. So this time he doesn't find that damage that he was looking for previously. Not only that, but check this out. So he's like, you know what? Let's borrow some Widow Mines. He goes, you know what? Ooh, if a Warp Prism flies over here, I can try and snipe that with these Widow Mines. Tries to do something a little bit tricky. Otherwise, though, it's the exact same timing of the push. He just hasn't killed 10 probes. He's only killed 2 this time. So third tank's going to rally over. Liberator's going to rally over. Behind it, the tech lab. The factory swaps off and starts a reactor. We should see an SCV go down and start a third command center. I think he'll start it in his main base to be safe. And he's actually not going to use the Liberator with the push this time. He's going to use the Liberator to try and siege up the back door. So he's changing up the pattern of this just a little bit. And I think part of the reason for that is because he doesn't have as tight a choke point area. It's always going to be easier to kind of position around. This map, a little bit easier for Stats to defend because this area is so open. And he also has the watchtower. So what Stats would love to do, since he actually has an army out this time rather than 2 sentries, a Colossi, and a Zealot, is let's slow down this push. Let's force the siege up, but don't actually engage. Just force the siege up, pull back. Force the siege up, pull back. And you'll see just how well Stats does this, where he's just like, yeah, I'm just going to hold position out of range. And he's just buying himself valuable time. What does he want time for? Colossus range, second Colossus, and more warp-ins. This Liberator does complicate matters. TY comes in from behind with this. Remember, guys, third CC is down. He'll drop the double engineering bay very soon behind this. Still got that economic transition behind. And yeah, he's added the second tech lab with Stim as well. So even though he's denying mining time up here, he's got a probe kill. He's still pushing in on the front. He's brought these Widow Mines down. And he just doesn't have the numbers. This time, Stats is able to clean it up. He bought himself a little bit of time. He will lose 1 Colossi. If the Liberator was here with this, would that have made this work for TY? No, not at all. Why? Because Stats actually warped in 3 Stalkers at the back and fought the Liberator. So if the Liberator was with the push, it would simply mean there's 3 more Stalkers here for Stats, counteracting the effect of that Liberator, and this would work out exactly the same way. So if the Protoss has a clean build, manages to deflect the Hellions, manages to deflect the Widow Mine drop, and then tries to slow down your push and does that, they can hold on for sure. So for Protoss players out there, I might talk more about this push and a few other pushes and do a daily on that in future, but for now it's like, okay, cool, so this can be held off. But what's really surprising to me is how good TY's transition is. So let's just fast forward through this game and say, well, you're pretty screwed, right, TY? Yeah, you've got, what, 7 Marines and 2 medevacs out right now? Like, look at this. You're equal on workers with Stats, so that's pretty good, right? Yeah, that's actually not bad. Did he go double eBay this game? Yeah, he does go double eBay, but there we go. Armor does start. Missile turret's going down. Third command set is going to land. And he's like, you know what? Let's just go up into this normal play and let's use some medevacs to try and zone, to try and keep Stats back. Let's threaten drops all over the place, because if I can threaten drops, it should be able to buy time, because he knows his army is weak on the front. Because he delayed the add-ons, you know, he didn't really have as much of a swell of production as early. But now he's like, okay, get the second starport, get the armory. I need to catch up in upgrades and everything. And he actually drags this out to be a very long game. So even though he's down a bit in supply here, his army is definitely weaker. If Stats was able to push across the map, he potentially would just die. Because the follow-up is a little bit greedy with the engineering bays, the third command center, and so on. And because he can then posture with drops to buy time, TY definitely can force a macro game out of this, even when his push really fails quite hard. I mean, killing a Colossi is nice, but it's not worth 3 siege tanks and a Liberator. So this game goes on for a long time from here, guys. It's not part of today's daily. I know some people really want me to like look at the whole game, but I like my dailies to be nice and tight in terms of what we focus on. So we're very quickly going to look at Cactus Valley, just to look at one other variation of this build, and then we'll finish up. It'll only take us 2 or 3 minutes. Basically, as I was talking about before, this is the game which kind of interests me in terms of I wish I I could speak Korean and actually harass all the Korean pro gamers for their decision making in some of these situations. Not that they'd be happy to go and reveal their secrets in big tournaments, as that would be giving away a bit of a competitive edge. But yeah, it's pretty cool. So this push is pretty brutal, guys. Let me take a look at some questions in chat while we go through Cactus Valley. Oh yeah. So I briefly glossed over this before, guys, but let's go into a little bit more detail on. Aren't Phoenix and Adepts very popular right now? You know, does this work? How do I make this work against Phoenix and Adepts? It's the most common question, right? You just don't do it. I know there's gonna be people like, I only play against Phoenix every game, and I'm like, are you serious? I'm pretty sure you don't. Like, I don't know. I always feel like there's people like get very argumentative whenever I do a video about anything. There's always like two people who have to make a comment like, but this isn't the meta right now, and you're like, well, actually, like, the meta kind of shifts pretty quickly. Like, I feel like things move around really fast. So anyway, yeah, as I said before, this is a solid opening, and the whole thing is you scout with those Hellions and the Reaper, and you're only committing to anything after that. So if you don't see a fast Robo, a sort of Robo Twilight build, or just a straight Robo Colossi build like what Stats is doing, which is kind of the higher level variation, which you'll see him in Showtime do a lot. If you don't see that, you just build one Siege Tank and continue about your normal way, adding a third command center, adding engineering bays, and so on. It's still a very solid opening. There's 2 Hellion Reaper pressure into 2 Widow Mine drop. You don't need to go completely all in with this. It's a solid opening. Just don't build 3 Siege Tanks, add the third add-on on the third barracks, continue with a normal build. It's a very standard setup that you end up with here. So it's nothing completely out of the ordinary by any means. So don't do it against Stargate play. And that's what's interesting about this final game, actually, because we're going to see a completely different execution by TY. It looks like the same opening, right? Looks completely the same. And the Reaper comes in for TY. He sees the pylon location, but it's too early for tech to be down, so he doesn't really know anything. There could easily be a Robo or a Stargate back there, Robo or a Stargate go here. And yet, TY already goes for a very different way of executing the opening. And he's just like, oh, you know what? I'm just going to build Marines out of the reactor. And I'm just going to build a tech lab on the factory straight away and go for a Raven. And this is so fascinating to me because he doesn't have that verification that it's not Stargate. So this answers that exact question you guys are asking in chat. Which is, holy shit. Like, do you really have the balls to just commit to this blind? Yeah, TY does. TY has giant balls, guys. I don't know if you knew this. He just won $300,000 in the last 3 months of tournaments. He's got giant balls. Game 7, $100,000 tournament. He has faith. Now, what's interesting is he gets out the Raven and these Marines, and he goes hunting for the Observer. But Stats is so Gosu. He just like sends that Observer down the right-hand side, comes in and sees everything, and then still dies. So what's cool about this variation is you do no pressure. You assume the Protoss is going to be really locked up. Some of you guys might like this variation. You say, I love having the Raven. I love denying the Observer. I love dropping auto turrets when they try to break my tank contain. Cool, go for it if you want. What's the weakness of going for this Raven? Well, if you're not harassing the Protoss early, what if the Protoss just does a super economic opening, kind of cuts a corner or two? You know, the Protoss might be really lazy and not have his Mothership core in the right position. He might not have any defense early on, and you're missing out on the opportunity to do a lot of damage to him. So you miss out on the opportunity to keep your opponent honest. So if the Protoss player is exceptionally greedy, he definitely can get away with some bullshit if you go for this Raven opening. All you're doing is denying his scouting, denying his information, and having a stronger frontal push, but you are sacrificing the ability to keep the Protoss in check. You're never going to get the game like that Belshir game where you kill 10 probes and you just like, you start patting yourself on the back and you're like, yeah, all right, I just win the game now. But yeah, it's still very nice. It still works out really well. So otherwise, it's the exact same build, guys. Combat shields first, built lots of Marines. This time he did add in just one Marauder towards the tail end of the push. But otherwise it is just one Medevac Oh, no medevac this game either. So that's interesting. All right, let's go back and just focus on that transition very quickly, guys, just to walk you through it. Okay, so Factory builds a tech lab, lifts off. Factory sits idle for a little bit. You build a Raven. You then build another tech lab for the factory, and then you start building your extra barracks as you get money. You'll notice the third barracks gets delayed a little bit here. It's not the end of the world. Your starport immediately lifts off the tech lab when that Raven is done, and then you want to build a Liberator on it. So he's actually skipping the medevac, which makes this even more kind of short-termed because he doesn't go for that Widow Mine drop. It's like, well, I'm not able to heal my units, but because you're going for shields rather than stim, your units are already a little bit more absorbent of damage anyway. So it works out quite fine. Of course, on a map like Cactus Valley, especially when it's not cross map, this is like the ideal map for this sort of push. And even though he didn't take any damage, let's take a look at a few things that Stats does wrong here. The first one is he doesn't move down to intercept the push early enough. He's already only doing it here. This is already very close to his base, and especially very close to the choke point. The choke point. The choke point. Ugh. The most disgusting areas. And what happens here is he stays too long trying to force that siege up, and he actually loses a Stalker, takes damage on his units, and he's going to screw up that forcing the siege up again. Look, he comes in, stays too long, once again, loses a sentry, more damage on his units. His Colossus has lost shields and hit points. Massive screw-ups from Stats. Not only that, he's at 52 probes, 6 of which are uselessly mining on this base rather than the third. And he's got 2 Stalkers down here on the bottom right-hand side. So not only is this the ideal spawn location, the ideal map for this push, and is it a well-executed, hard-hitting push from TY, but Stats makes a few mistakes. If I recognize this push coming as Stats, I would just be like, all right, cut probes at like 45. 2 bases saturated. That's all I need, because you know if you hold this push, you can explode into probing your third base. You can probably counter pressure. But if you keep your Colossi alive, if you actually have enough units, that's the most important thing. So personally, I would either focus, I'm not sure how it times out, but I would either get these 2 extra gateways, go up to 5 gateways at about 5 minutes, knowing this push hits at 6:25, or I would just make sure that there is non-stop warp-ins on these 3 gateways from like 4 minutes 30 onwards. I'd be like non-stop, warp-in, 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 warp-in. So that then with your 2 Colossi, you've got an extra 3 or 4 gateway units and you can just break it. But once again, we see Stats here. Keeps taking unnecessary damage. He desperately needs the shields to regenerate on this Colossi, on these units, but he's taking more damage every second that goes by, and he's taken too long. He realizes at this point, he's let the Terran get into the position of doom. There's a bunker going up, there's siege tanks, there's a Liberator. He has to go now or never. I actually think it's the wrong decision. I think he was a little bit panicked. It's a very important game, and I think this is a terrible time and place to engage. I think he should have tried to make something else happen, bought a little bit more time, maybe waited for 3 Colossi, hoping that TY overextended, because he was never going to break that position. Gets completely massacred. Units lost tab. Terrans lost a Liberator and a few Marines. Protoss has lost an entire army. And from here it is game over. So it's kind of crazy to see TY just do this 3 games in a row at the end of a series. 2 games, he did actually verify that it was the fast Colossi play which Stats had beat him with. And then he chose to go for this. The final game here, he said, no, fuck you, I'm just doing it. We can't read into TY's mindset, but I wouldn't suggest that for most of you guys at home. I would suggest the Hellion variation. That's why that's what I've put into the spawning tool link. Because you will often get overrun by Phoenixes, Oracles, and Adepts. Let's look at when that push is first moving across the map and sieging up. And I want you guys to imagine with me, if you've got 8, 9 Adepts, or even just 7 Adepts. They wouldn't have glaives yet, but just 7 Adepts, 3 Phoenix and Oracle, jumping on top of this army. Those Marines are going to disappear. The tanks can get lifted. Even though the auto turrets are going to do a lot of damage, they're not just going to massacre everything. So I definitely do think that I'm pretty sure an air army beats this, even though this Raven variation is going to be a lot more robust against it than the previous variation with the earlier Widow Mine drop. Yeah. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. I'd love to see how it plays out. Auto turrets actually do like 300 damage a piece or something ridiculous throughout their duration, so you might need to like engage and then disengage as Protoss. So guys, let's very quickly summarize the points. I wasn't sure if I wanted to cover this today, but let's talk about how the fuck do you hold this as Protoss. Let's summarize those points. I already touched on them all. Number 1, force the siege up. Move down, force the Terran to siege up, preferably way back on his side of the map. The moment you see him leave the base, you need to come out. The reason this is hard on this map is specifically because of this Raven. Comes back, shuts down that observer early on. It's part of the genius of the Raven version. So number 1, don't let them siege up at your base. Number 2, build a shitload of units. Number 3, don't probe too hard. Now, it's always going to be very different based on your version of the build, but I really would not advise blink against this sort of build. You definitely could potentially do it with the blink opening, but it's really going to rely on you slowing down the push. Like, you're going to really need to use the flexibility and maneuverability of your units. If you go blink and you let them siege up at your base, you are just so friggin' dead. Like, there is no way you ever hold this because siege tanks shred stalkers. Marines still do decently if you kind of blink on top of them. Combined with a Liberator, it's just not going to go well for you. Colossi openings definitely can hold this. We saw that on a grounds game where Stats had a clean opening, didn't make mistakes, shut it down, got ahead. We saw on Belshire, he took way too much damage from the harass, and he was pretty much dead from there. So it's all just about sieging up the Terran, scouting what's going on, and realizing what's up. Let's also talk about a couple of big tells. For some of you guys who aren't too familiar with that, think about the build order I just talked about. What is Terran sacrificing here in this opening? And this is also good for you Terran players to understand as well. You are sacrificing extra add-ons. You are sacrificing upgrades, fast third CC, and infrastructure. You'll see that in just a moment. Let's fast forward to about 4:30. And here we get to see it. No add-on on this starport for a very long time. And not only no add-on, but it's not building add-ons for extra buildings. It's just kind of chilling. There's these little gaps in production. This third barracks is just going to sit here and build Marines with no add-on. A very inefficient way to use the barracks. It gives you an initial extra bit of power. Just that 2 or 3 bonus Marines it gets doesn't sound like a lot. In this case, it was only 1 Marine with this build, actually. He normally builds 2 or 3 out of it. You know, even just that tiny little boost doesn't seem like a lot, but it really boosts your push at the cost of where the fuck is the 3rd command center? Where the hell are the engineering bays? Nowhere to be seen. And yeah, Stim ends up very late as well. So if you ever fly in, you see a Terran building out of structures without add-ons, that's usually a very big tell they're being very aggressive. If you ever see a tech lab factory for an extended amount of time, if you get into a base and you see that at like 4 minutes, you're like, oh, okay, he's building a tank for safety. If you see it still there at 5 minutes, you're like, oh god, he's going all in with some tanks, man. You come in again, you see that, you're like, oh shit, and you immediately know what's happening. This goes for Zerg as well. Like, if you see barracks without add-ons, Terran's going to attack you because it's inefficient to do that in the long term. So he's doing it for an immediate, let's get a bunch of units out and push you, and then chill. So anyway, guys, that is about that. I figured, I really wasn't sure even going into today's show. I was like, am I going to do a separate show talking about all this? And then I'm looking at it and I'm like, you just kind of move out and force the siege up and have enough units. I'll definitely do a show talking about all variation of tank pushes and defending these 2 basey Terran pushes, like the later big ones as well as these fast ones at a later date. But for now, I think that's good enough for this. So, Versa 111 or Terran 1 base, do you prefer Robo or Stargate? Oh, a 1 base one. Oh, because that's kind of like a vaguely related question from Maples. I personally prefer to just build 3 gateways and then get a Robo. Definitely a Robo, you know, needs to be out pretty early and doing things like having a pylon out front your natural to overcharge to slow down their siege up can be nice, or getting a few stalkers out to like go out and snipe off Marines as they walk across the map. So a few different ways you can do it. It really depends how you choose to play though. Cactus Valley, okay, and a great comment from Diamond Tie, not a question. He says, Cactus Valley seems like the wet dream of every Terran. Many drop angles, run by paths, and it's filled with chokes. Yeah, it's a kind of nasty map to deal with drops. TvT on Cactus Valley is notoriously aggressive. Like, you think people love doom dropping and just attacking constantly in regular TvT? Wait till you see Alive playing on Cactus Valley. It's like, Oh my god, I think it was even a live versus Jack G or something. There was like an insane couple of TVTs at IEM on that map. So anyway, guys, let's finish up the show. Today's been a longer one than I've done in a while, but I just kind of felt like going into a bit of detail, looking at a series of the games here. It's a $100,000 push, so yeah, guys, go memorize that push. Go win yourself $100,000. Thanks for hanging out, guys. Don't forget to hug a watermelon, kick a walrus, and of course, punch a kukul to the tender moon, something. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye and good night. I said I was going to memorize that new outro and then I forgot it already. Damn it. I screwed up, guys. I let you down.